Hi, everyone. It's Colleen, the Preparedness Pro, here for today's Preparedness Pro pop-in. Hope you're having a wonderful Wednesday. It is hump day. That means you're on the downside of the week. And instead of just getting started and roughing your way through it, let's see. We can get things going with Instagram. Dun, ta-da, ta-da. We did it. Okay, we're good. Alrighty, so we are going to get into part 2 today of the next coming collapse. So I've always been one to prepare for natural disasters, but I think that what's been prevalent on my mind is a financial collapse. However, with a bit of homework and a lot of research, I have come to believe that there's another collapse that could happen quite easily. In fact, we kind of got a taste of that with the port strike that we thought we were going to have, which I believe we still will in January, just so you know, because they're still far apart. And the president of the union has I think he's more interested in establishing a reputation than he is taking care of his union members and the nation. But that's my 2 cents. That's me judging him based on his rhetoric that he has been putting out there, even after the settlement. So he's still fighting for bear. he's still looking for it. Anyway, so what I wanted to talk about today was part 2 of this. What I started on yesterday was before I ended it was that we had situation 2005, which may seem like a lifetime ago, and for some of you, if you're only like 19 or so, it is a lifetime ago. Anyway, we're starting to lose first responder services due to budget constraints, often impacting fire departments, emergency medical services, and 911 call centers. It used to be unheard of not to get a 911 call answered. You could always get a 911 call answered, but we're not seeing that happen now. And we're seeing very incompetent people. Sometimes I have nothing but respect for first responders, but there have been some videos and such circulating that have shown some really incompetent 911 responders on the call and not first responders. But it's been pretty interesting. I mean, everybody's human. So no matter what job you have, it doesn't mean that you're no longer human. I understand that. But I think that's because they're just so desperate to fill their staffing shortages with the budget that they do have, that they're willing to look the other way, whereas they didn't used to. Throughout 2023, numerous 911 centers face severe staffing shortages. Some regions reporting a vacancy rate as high as 56%. That makes sense why some calls are just plain not getting answered. You have factors contributing to the crisis, including stress of the job, which I can only imagine. But when you take stress of the job plus low wages and high turnover rates, that just exasperates the limited funding for hiring and retention efforts. Excuse me. You have a U.S. Forest Service budget cuts. In 2024, the U.S. Forest Service warned of the budget cuts that could impact staffing levels during one of the most challenging wildfire seasons that we were expected to have. Although some additional funding was made through disaster response, the agency highlighted challenges in retaining, qualified firefighters, which could hinder their ability to resolve wildfires. So that was obviously a problem. Moving on to things such as pipes and wires and roads and bridges, etc. There was a steam pipe that exploded in New York City in 2007, killing a woman and leaving a whole bunch more seriously hurt. And then another event in 2018, a steam pipe exploded in Manhattan's Flatiron District. Isn't this interesting where this is all happening? Where the cost of living is so high, you would think that people would have some semblance of better safety in this area of New York, but that's not the case. In 2018, Manhattan's Flatiron District, it sent steam, debris, asbestos-contaminated material into the air. The explosion led to evacuations and cleanup efforts similar to the concerns that they raised in 2007. It never should have happened in 2018 because they knew that their steam pipes were corroded and having a problem. Again, Midtown Manhattan, just last year, another steam pipe burst, leading to street closures and precautions due to potential asbestos contamination again. Now let's talk about drinking water. As I take another drink of my water. My allergies are having fun today. Oh, big bottle. Okay, so America's drinking water system. This is interesting because it has an annual shortfall. Annual. This is the drinking water systems, folks, not just any water systems. This is our drinking water. So let's see, what area of preparedness does drinking water fall in? Oh, yeah, it's one of those important ones, right? But we don't care as a nation because we allow a shortfall of at least $11 billion to occur every year to replace aging facilities that are near the end of their useful life, to comply with any regulations that we may have for future federal water regulations. This doesn't account for the growth in the demand for drinking water over the next, however many years. $11 billion we're allowing to shortfall every year. You don't think that's going to catch up with us? And I keep tripping on the word, but we're allowing, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of immigrants into the nation, and we're taxing that system even more, and we're not willing to take care of it. We're willing to take care of them without any ID or anything of this nature, making sure that they have a health test and they're coming into the country legally, but we're not willing to take care of the drinking water for the U.S., for American citizens. We send stimulus checks to consumers, and they spend it on a TV or whatever. I don't care how they spend it. It's their money once they receive it. But after 2 years, a stimulus check will boost the economy by a whopping $125. But if they actually worked on the infrastructure and they pay for construction workers, et cetera, and then they spend that money, and we have a strengthened infrastructure, and we have $350 worth of economic stimulus to show for it. So let's see, we can send out stimulus checks to people, have $125 per person to show for it, or we could actually strengthen the infrastructure and have $350 worth of economic stimulus per person to show for it. For every dollar spent on infrastructure gives into the economy, but that relies upon whether or not you're just printing it up in the first place, of course. So yeah, there's that. There are some really solid ideas out there for fixes, such as for our roads. Arizona, for example, they got on it. I had heard way back in high school of some lore about how great the roads were in Germany. And apparently that wasn't just folklore, because apparently Arizona embraced the German way of building roads. They've got this new crumb rubber, which is a recycling of old tires that they use in Germany, and the longevity of the road. And as you know, they go as much as 100 miles per hour on their roads. So now it's 17 years after putting it in Arizona. It still looks new. It also cuts down on the amount of material in half. They've got over 1,200 miles of pavement in Arizona now. The new governor put a halt to it. Go figure. It's great for snow. And I know you might be thinking snow in Arizona. No, they do get snow in some parts of Arizona. There's 100 inches of snow. No problem. It doesn't deteriorate. So basically what Arizona's crumb rubber project is it integrates this recycled tire into road construction through like rubberized asphalt. And it's continued to make progress. The Arizona DOT uses this rubberized asphalt on the state's highways, particularly in urban areas like Phoenix. And this approach not only helps to extend the life of the roads, but also reduces noise levels, which has been a key benefit for communities near freeways, so in your urban areas. The process involves blending crumb rubber made from recycled tires into hot asphalt, and it's then used to resurface the highways. So they don't even have to take out the existing highways. They're just using them to resurface it. So for example, I found out that rubber from about 75,000 tires was used in a paving project along I-17 in Phoenix. And they've been using the method for years, and it remains very cost effective, environmentally friendly, because it's a way to repurpose waste tires while creating more durable and crack resistant road surfaces. So, and yes, it performs well in snowy and cold conditions. The elasticity provided by that rubber in the asphalt helps prevent the cracking and the damage that occurs during your freeze thaw cycles. So it makes it really suitable for regions that experience significant snowfall and cold temperatures. But do you have our nation taking people up on that? No, even though it's proven, it's right there. You've got northern Arizona where snowfall is common. Rubberized asphalt has been used on highways such as Interstate 17 and 40, and those highways face significant cold weather stress. And that crumb rubber helps to minimize cracking and maintaining smoother surfaces, making the roads safer during icy or snowy conditions. So how about them apples, huh? It's part of a larger effort to address that urban heat islands in Arizona, because the rubberized asphalt helps to absorb less heat compared to traditional materials, contributing to, like a cooler pavement in your urban areas. And despite the challenges of applying it, because there is a little bit of a challenge applying it in extreme weather conditions, because it's so hot, it remains a preferred choice for the Arizona freeway projects, unless, of course, you're the new governor there. And we won't talk about that. So anyway, so as I mentioned yesterday, in the U.S., we've got about almost 250,000 water main breaks that occur every year, which averages, between 650, 720, if my head math is right. So these water main breaks result in a lot of water loss and disruption to communities. In Washington alone, there is a pipe break every day on average. Intense rains will overwhelm the city's systems. Untreated sewage will then flow into the Potomac and the Anacostia rivers. When I say Washington, I meant DC, of course. Of course, you're supposed to read my mind. Don't you know that? There have been state and federal studies that I came across that indicated that thousands of water and sewer systems may be too old to function properly, period. Not at all, but period. So who knows what they're drinking there. You think you need a water filter for water filtration for an emergency? Your emergency may already be there. I used to work for Rainsoft. You guys all remember that name? If you're old enough, you probably do. That and Paul Harvey, because he always did commercials for Rainsoft. I used to work for Rainsoft, and I loved it because it was a sale almost every time. If I tested the water and showed them what was in their water and how Rainsoft could help it, I mean, when people woke up to see what was going on, it was an easy sale. So I just had to do more appointments than everybody else to be the top salesperson. I think that's my point, though, is saying that awareness is just not on par with just how bad the situation is. EPA says that the biggest systems, a third of water pipes, are 40 to 80 years old. And that, let's see, what was it? 30, yes, it was 30% of the pipes in the systems that deliver more than 100,000 people are also between 40 to 80 years old. So not the people, the pipes. So about 10% of these pipes are even older than that. So when crews dig to fix broken water pipes, now you have, AT&T and Verizon lines that didn't used to be there, cable lines, fiber lines, electrical lines. So much has been added to that underworld that each of these fixes get more and more complicated to get done properly. It's just astronomical how much that price tag would be to fix it. But it's only getting worse. We can't say that's too expensive. We can't afford it. We can't afford it. It's our infrastructure. You don't have a country if you don't have first world services. Like, proper sewage and running water that's safe to drink. I mean, how many of us have ever donated money to water programs so that people in third world countries can have water safe to drink, and yet we can't contribute we can't use our tax dollars to get safe water here, and reliable, so that it doesn't crumble at the slightest jar in our infrastructure. Just the best guess at the total cost over the next 20 years has skyrocketed. This is just drinking water to $335 billion. Just drinking water. That's what it would cost. In our day, almost every major American city had private water companies. And then we had this wave of socialization where the government took everything over and mismanaged it. So the quality of tap water is lower and costs are higher. Gee. So now you've got bacteria and viruses that can enter the water supply through bursting pipes. Let's go nuclear. Let's take it up a step. Let's just go nuclear here. We've got 103 nuclear power plants. And the risk goes far beyond the outages that you can affect every part of our critical infrastructure. These plants constitute the most dangerous concentrations of hazmats, okay, in the nation. So a serious accident in these plants would produce deadly radiation that could kill a few 100,000 people. And about 1/2 of our population in the US lives within 50 miles of a nuclear power plant. And with a large release and the right wind orientation, its killing power would extend that far easily. About half of our plants have spent storage pools outside of the reactor, and thus they're vulnerable to terrorist attacks. And we do have on record several attempted terrorist attacks on that type of infrastructure. They don't need to nuke us with a nuclear bomb. They can essentially obliterate our infrastructure with a severe accident. At least one of these pools was so poorly maintained and overloaded that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission had to intervene in its operation. And I suspect that there are many more vulnerable to small accidents and poor maintenance and overloading. There's often more radioactive material in spent storage pools than in the reactor itself. Yeah, that was an interesting little fact. And basically a breach of the pool walls, possibly with the drive-by shooting, would cause the spent rods to emit radioactive particles in a few minutes, like sparklers on the 4th of July. So how about them apples? Just disabling the controls and the emergency water spray with grenades would cause the cooling water to boil away in a few hours. The plants are poorly guarded. Safety drills are unrealistic. The corporation has to supply most of the guards and that get the advance warning and the details of mock attacks that they're supposed to use to test the security. And they have serious security failures that have occurred in the past. So not so great. All right, we've gone nuclear. Let me come down a little bit. I'm Debbie Downer today, aren't I? Oh my goodness. Let's talk about the internet. That's the most critical node in our critical infrastructure. It's the internet. And that's why I'm hitting on it at this point, because basically its reliability and its security have been threatened by concentrated economic power. You've got the power of the Microsoft Corporation, and well, let's look at it this way in brief. The problem is as follows. When Microsoft gained this preeminent position over its few competitors with its first operating system, basically there was no more reliability or security that was of great concern for some reason. As you know, an operating system is the software that runs a computer, and there's few critical infrastructure facilities heavily on small, low-powered computers, and there was no public internet to connect to. So now all these facilities are heavily dependent on the reliability of operating systems, and most of them make use of the internet. So you have the limited concern with reliability and security meant that old legacy codes were still utilized, but they still have their flaws or their bugs that previously have not been consequential. One of these bugs, an inconsequential one, has survived for over 20 years through all the versions up to the new, up to, let's see, it was the Vista version in 2007. And even a major rewriting of the code of that operating system following the failure of the Longhorn project to modernize the software did not eliminate it. They have other known inconsequential bugs in their system leading all the way up to 2024 to that update. Having bugs in your preeminent operating system is not good. That's why it's so important. Some of the government institutions are no longer using that type of operating system, but they all are generational, are connected in one way or another because they're still getting them from the same brainiacs. So I'm far less concerned about the reliable of Microsoft's operating system, which is open source systems such as Linux and Unix and the Macintosh systems that have been more reliable, than I am with the security issue, because Microsoft's practice has been to integrate applications into the operating systems rather than having them ride on top of the system as modules. So this limits competition from competing applications and it increases Microsoft's profits and market share. But it also makes it easy for a hacker to exploit any sloppy code that Microsoft is accused of using in order to deposit viruses into the operating system itself. It allows hackers to insert a bot that will allow the hacker to take control of the machine. And we're seeing it. We're seeing banks and hospitals. I mean, you're seeing it on TV, but that's because it's happening in real life as well. I'm seeing it in some of the drama storylines because I like to watch medical dramas and legal dramas, and we're seeing entire cities be hacked and held for ransom. Ransomware is quite common now, and they're just paying for it. And that is because of the flaws in the operating systems. They have also broken into military sites and accessed their files, something that would have strategic consequences, though probably not catastrophic potential yet, but it's definitely strategic consequences. It's estimated that over half of all computers connected to the internet are infected with these bots, enabling the intruder to get thousands of computers to try to access an internet address at once, which means it's then able to overload the server and rendering the server inoperative. So you may be wondering why people are trying to hack your Facebook page. It's for the incorporation of the bots in your life, in your computer. I just had somebody the other day, one of my friends on Facebook said, hey, I can't get this. She's she can be kind of an airhead. She's just getting older, and I just thought maybe she was being an airhead a little bit and didn't know what she was doing. And she's like, can I text you? And I thought she was asking me, can I text you and have you tell me what number shows up? Meaning, what number she's texting me from, because she was having some problems. And I said, sure. And so I get a text and they then say, now tell me the number that you're seeing as soon as it comes in. And I realized then that was a scammer, that they were trying to get me to give away a security number. It's not so that they can take over my life and have me say dumb things on my own Facebook page. It's so that they can incorporate these bots. So military establishments and the FBI are among the sites that have been shut down for days in denial of service attacks, overloading the server, which distributes the messages to their sources and rendering the server inoperative. As a result of Microsoft's vulnerability to hackers and, of course, terrorists, you have Russian hackers and terrorists. Chinese hackers and terrorists are encouraged by their government. They shut down much of Estonia's government internet services and facilities at one time, as well as its newspaper and its banking system completely in 1 year. Can you believe that? just by hacks. And our system is just as vulnerable. It's only the only good thing that saves us is that we have other hackers that are willing to work for the good guys and wear white hats and try to combat them. But we have some very clever terrorists that could take control of nuclear power plants and electronic power grids, our military facilities, our banking services, and even hospitals, all because of Microsoft Windows operating system command. 95% of the market for computers that access the internet. Okay, let's talk about just a few loose ends here, and then I'll wrap up. Eric Goldstein, he's the Natural Resources Defense Council. He blamed the infrastructure for a salmonella outbreak that sickened more than 250 people in Colorado. And he said, and I quote, "That's just the tip of the iceberg." He said each day leaking pipes account for an estimated 7 billion gallons of water, according to the American Society of Civil Engineers. U.S. water utilities lose an average of about 10% of their water, which is now worth over $7.4 billion per year through leaks and other causes, according to the EPA. A large part of the U.S. water delivery system dates back to the years shortly after World War II. If you didn't know that, that's the delivery systems. And then you even have some that date back to as far back as earlier before that. Some even being taken care of during World War I. Critical water pipelines are breaking from coast to coast, triggered by record high temperatures. It's not a phenomenon or a coincidence. It's a clear sign that Americans should brace for more water interruptions, accompanied by skyrocketing high bills. How's that for fun? The heat wave that we had this summer burst hundreds of crucial pipes in California, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Indiana, Kentucky, New York, and I stopped looking after that. It temporarily shut off water to countless consumers just when they needed it most. It was recorded as one of the worst summers by one of the utility departments. 100-degree plus temperature baked the region. Utilities report about 685 water main breaks just in 3 months. That's an estimated rate of 4 times the normal to keep up with repairs. They're not even keeping up with repairs with the staff that they have now. Imagine having that kind of surge in water main breaks. High temperatures dry soil so that it shrinks away from the buried pipes, and increased water usage raises pressure inside those water lines. And then both factors add a strain to the pipeline walls. One last thing I want to bring up is something that was discovered during the aftermath here of the hurricanes, is that gas companies are not able to keep up in the aftermath. This is natural gas companies. They're not able to keep up in the aftermath of generator usage, which is crazy because you have all these houses that aren't using gas at all because their houses are destroyed. And yet you still have so much usage on generators that the gas companies just shut off. People's generators just plain weren't working any longer, even though they ran on natural gas. So that's a little disturbing as well. So we got it coming and going. There's no component of your life of government infrastructure that you rely upon that is not crumbling. So what do? What can you do about this? The same thing that you can do about everything is to be prepared, is to not have to rely on it, is to have alternatives. Make sure you've got drinking water. Make sure you have a way to cook food when the power is out, because the power is going to be out. At some point or another, the power is going to be out. Your water is going to be cut off. Your just-in-time food delivery system could easily be interrupted. We don't need a major earthquake to debilitate us. We just need one really bad crack to debilitate us. And that's all it will take. I think one of the stats that I read said that a water main breaks every 2 minutes in the US, and both freezing and heat cause them to burst. So It underscores the fact that much of the nation's underground water lines are 80 to 100 years old. Experts call it America's replacement era, when hundreds of water utilities nationwide will be forced to replace their aging infrastructure or suffer the consequences. And I think they are waiting to suffer the consequences. I think they are waiting until towns like Kemp, Texas, population 1150, where they had an emergency level because of a water main break. I mean, it was catastrophic. A historic drought throughout Texas left Kemp with cracks so big in the ground you could lose a small dog to them, is what the mayor had said. We had water main breaks that emptied water towers and forced Kemp to shut off their water service for a while. The mayor blamed the crises on 80-year-old pipelines and high demand as temperatures had risen above 100 degrees for 37 straight days. So, get my meaning? It doesn't take much. It could just take the wrong combination of things, and we're sitting pretty for a perfect storm. I won't go into more details and such. I think I belabored the fact that bottom line is, it doesn't matter what you look at. Sewage, and I didn't even get into sewage. I mean, I didn't even talk about that. I started finding that stuff, and I'm like, okay, no, I can't do that. I've got an ick factor thing with me, so I couldn't even go there. But your water, your electricity, let's not even talk about the air, because we're still breathing that. It's all good. We're still got air. But there's plenty of things that are going amok that could easily go worse. And we have got to, they did all this pretense of this infrastructure bill, but it's not even a Band-Aid. And what they really need to do is be spending enough of our GDP on a regular basis to fix what's amok. Because if we don't have law and order in this nation, if we don't have functioning first world utilities, then we're not a great nation. We are a third world nation. And I'm not saying that from a pride thing. I'm saying that from a danger thing. It's very dangerous to be a third world nation. I've lived in one. And while it would be good for some humility, because I've never seen a happier people in my life than what I saw in the Philippines. They were just so grateful for a cup of rice or some crackers and a Coca-Cola. We could certainly use a dose of that in this nation. I wouldn't relish, I wouldn't wish that on anyone that I care about. So if you have any questions for me, as usual, go ahead and message me. Somebody said American Water, the water company most of the country uses, was hacked recently as well. Yeah, somebody mentioned you saw an episode on Grey's Anatomy where their hospital was ransomed, and that's real life. We just had one here in Columbus, Ohio, right smack dab where I live, that a hospital was ransomed. It's happening left and right. So this isn't getting better. We need to be aware that it's happening, and we need to realize that the government's not going to protect us. They're not going to protect us. They're not taking responsibility for what they're supposed to be doing on our behalf. And we have to be willing to take care of ourselves. And that means to be properly prepared. So may you still have peace in your preparedness in spite of all these wonderful Debbie Downer details that I've shared with you. And may you find some strength to continue on in your preparing efforts in spite of curveballs that get thrown your way. I know it's hard to think optimistically when you're constantly in a state of prepping, but instead of being in a state of prepping, be in a state of self-reliance, and that will make a big difference in your mind as well. Try not to think of here I have everything that I need. Now, how do I keep my hands on it? Try not to think that way. Take responsibility for protecting your household like you would anything else. But don't have this, why bother mentality just because the odds are stacked against us, because there's still God. He's still in the details. And I believe he's in the details of the details. And then in spite of a crumbling infrastructure, we're still thriving. We just need to be ready for if we're not quite so blessed. And then we need a moment of humility. So, all right, folks, I will see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.